Welcome to the Behavioral Health Matters podcast, brought to you by Magellan Behavioral Health of Pennsylvania. Our podcast mission is simple. We are dedicated to having conversations focused on positive mental health, increasing understanding of behavioral health services, and most importantly, reducing stigma in our communities. I'm John Lees, your host and member and family advocate at Magellan of Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley. On this episode, we talk about strategies for managing our emotional well-being during the holiday season. To help us navigate this sometimes challenging season, we have an incredible panel of experts joining the conversation. We're thrilled to welcome our guests, Trish Nye from St. Luke's Penn Foundation and Gabe Nathan from Recovery Diaries. And for this special discussion, I'm excited to be joined by my co-host for this episode, Steph Cassanese. Steph's the manager of Recovery and Resiliency Services for Magellan of Pennsylvania. And remember to stay tuned at the end of this episode to find out how you can share your feedback about the podcast and make suggestions for future episodes. And now here's my conversation with Trish, Gabe, and Steph. Hello, Trish and Gabe. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Behavioral Health Matters podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you bet. And also a big welcome to our co-host for this episode, friend of the show, previous guest, and colleague, Steph Cassanese. Steph, thank you so much for co-hosting along with me for this episode.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Can't wait for this conversation. So let's get started. Trish and Gabe, and also Steph, if you would, can you provide the listeners with a little bit about your background, including your current work roles and other responsibilities?
So I am the executive director of Recovery Diaries, and it's an online nonprofit mental health storytelling platform. We feature really kind of three things: personal essays by folks living with mental health challenges. We make documentary films about people living with mental health challenges, stories that are hopeful and engaging and helpful. And we have a podcast. It's called Recovery Diaries in Depth that we just started last year. So that's kind of our newest thing. So that's what I do professionally. On the side, I'm an independent suicide awareness and prevention advocate, and I do that work in lots of different ways. Maybe we can touch on that later. And I live with anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive tendencies, have had my experiences with suicidality through my life. So I come at this from lots of different points of view.
And my name is Trish Nye, and I am the Senior Manager of Mental Health Services at St. Luke's Penn Foundation. So I support some of our community-based teams, ensuring that they're providing the folks who need it most with the best care possible. And I know that when I talk about community-based services, sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't understand. What is that?" Well, when I first started on my journey of recovery back in 2007, there were very limited options for support. You either had inpatient treatment, outpatient therapy, or medication management. So nowadays, there's actually this vast continuum that are available to folks, and community-based services is one of the key vital pieces, and that's where I belong. So some of those services include peer support, psychiatric rehabilitation, recovery coaching, health connections, app services, and they really offer a safety net for people as they travel along that continuum. They're vital, they're not talked about enough, and we need more of them. Actually, I have some family members that have received these services through St. Luke's Penn Foundation, and so firsthand, I can say how incredible they are, and I wish I had them back in the day when I needed them. Along my personal route, I am on the board of two different peer-run nonprofits, the Pennsylvania Peer Support Coalition. That's the professional organization for all peer professionals, and the Council of Southeast. They offer recovery services for folks in the 5-county area: Philly, Bucks, Monco, Chester, and Delco, and they really focus on trying to reduce the impacts of addiction.
And hello, everyone, again. My name is Steph Cassanese. My role here at Magellan is Manager for Recovery and Resiliency Services. That simply means that I lead our lived experience team. So I am also someone who lives with a mental health diagnosis. I come from a history of growing up in an addicted household. I have some OCD tendencies myself and some PTSD. So I also come from this from a lived experience perspective. At Magellan, I am responsible for all 7 of our counties that we are the MCO for, and I lead the team of peer specialists. In our organization, we call them recovery support coordinators, and their role is to support our members and our peer supporters. So we support our peer network as well in this role. And like I said, I also come from this from a personal experience as well, so I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
Well, what a wonderful group we have to have this conversation for this episode. And I really appreciate each of you, your willingness to sit down to have this conversation. Hopefully it's helpful for our audience and our listeners. And so we'll go ahead and jump in. And so to get things started, as we do dive into the subject of emotional well-being during the holidays, could each of you provide our audience with your perspective on the holiday season over the years, based on your experiences and perspective? And then also looking ahead, if you could share with us a little bit about what you're looking forward to this holiday season, and I guess just generally the holiday season overall.
Holiday season is a tricky animal. It's like a lot of things, like new motherhood. It's supposed to be all sparkly and twinkly and glowing, and I mean, you even hear that phrase regarding new mother. You're positively glowing. The Christmas trees are glowing. The Hanukkah candles are glowing. Everything's glowing. Well, everything isn't always glowing at the holiday season. Sometimes it's really dark and dank and isolating and depressing, and there can be a lot of anxiety that revs up in people as they're possibly going to family members' houses, maybe that they haven't seen in a while, or maybe a really long while, for perhaps some very good reasons. There may be people who are not supportive of you, who don't understand what you're going through, who may be really judgmental. You may be worried about questions about what you're achieving or not achieving, or about how much you weigh, or about whether you have a romantic partner, or well, all kinds of stuff come up during the holidays that can be incredibly intimidating for people, and frankly, just not great for your mental health. And yet there are all of these expectations loaded onto this time of year. So that can be really, really hard to navigate, which I guess is why we're here talking. One other thing, you asked John about things that you've noticed in kind of holidays past. And as a suicide awareness and prevention advocate, I really kind of try to keep my ear to the ground about what people are saying about suicide. And every year I see on social media the quote, "It's a Wonderful Life" myth being regurgitated and perpetuated, warning people that the suicide rate goes up during the Christmas holiday season, which is not true. It is not factually correct. And I really do believe that this myth started with "It's a Wonderful Life." And, you know, the suicide rate typically rises during the spring. And I just think it's really important when we're talking about the holidays and mental health to put that out there, just so people know facts. That said, the holidays are incredibly hard. And, you know, that fact about the suicide rate not rising doesn't negate that. So anyway, those are just some of my thoughts about the holidays.
So I love that you brought up motherhood, because I think that is spot on. When I first became a mom, I was pretty set on I was going to be so natural at this, and I had a vision of what that was going to look like. And then the baby came, and I didn't, and I was a mess. And it was like because I had these premeditated expectations, and when I couldn't live up to that, I really nosedived. You know, so yes, and I think that that is a really great analogy for the holiday season. I also want to tell like a fun fact. So when I was told that I got to be a guest on this podcast with Gabe, I was very excited because I actually met Gabe back in, I don't know if it was 2009, maybe 2010, maybe 2008.
2010. I started 2010. Yep.
And I was maybe 3 years into my own recovery, and I was a student at Montgomery County Community College, and I had my very first internship at an inpatient facility that Gabe worked at. And so I was placed on his team as an intern. And so I got to meet him and I got to follow him and his work. And then fast forward like 15 years later, I was at a NAMI Bucks event and there was Gabe. And he was doing this suicide prevention advocacy work. And so this is really full circle. So I'm quite excited about it. But anywho,
I just want to say I was overjoyed too. When I saw your name, I was like, oh my God, I know that name. I know her. And it's just so great to see you again. So I'm elated.
Full circle. So the holidays, my experience, what am I looking forward to? Yes, I do think that I still do what I did when I became a mom, and then I create this vision in my head of what it's going to look like, and it never can actually live up to that. But also, I think that my wellness and my recovery changes. It does not stay the same. And so back in 2007, when I was coming up on kind of a year of stability, the holidays looked very different than what they do now, right? Because I have changed. I think just being okay with that and honoring that and not going on social media and comparing myself to others and what their photos and videos look like. I will not have the designer family holiday pajama outfits. I might be able to swing by some holiday outfits that I get on discount at like Ross, Dress for Less. I think that this year, what I'm excited about most is really just being with family. My kids, we've talked a lot about service this year, especially kind of with everything going on. Yesterday, we hosted a holiday food drive, and we got a ton of food to be able to donate to our food pantries. And so we're just kind of looking for different ways to like be of service and be of service together. So that's something that I'm looking forward to.
I'm also glad you brought up motherhood because it made me think about not necessarily the holiday season that we're in, but Mother's Day used to be somewhat of a landmine for me when you have a difficult relationship with a parent and you feel this pressure societally, like you only have one mother and you got to appreciate her and blah, 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 blah. And I think we do a lot of the same things around this particular holiday season. I think we put a lot of expectations on, like Trish said. We want things to be perfect and have that sort of movie. I think trying to avoid, or as much as you can, will lower the expectations that you have for the season and trying to just sort of take things as they come. That's been my strategy over the last few years. I think we're in a very difficult time where you may encounter conversations that could be very problematic and things like that. So I know for me, that's something I've been thinking a lot about, of how to handle if that situation happens, right? I think we want to have some tools in our toolbox ready to go, whether that's a quick change of the subject and walk away, or whether that, whatever that looks like for you, trying to avoid those landmines that people might throw out to, some people I think like to disrupt other people's holidays. It's almost like they do it on purpose. Not sure why. But, for me, I have a problematic relationship with one particular family member where I just have to have strategies of quickly change the subject and move on. As far as what I'm looking forward to, I have 5 grandkids, and that has been the most fun thing that has ever happened in my life. And reason for having kids is having grandkids is absolutely true. For anyone who doesn't have them yet, I can tell you so much better than your own kids. Not necessarily responsible for their every day. So when you have them, you're like, ice cream for breakfast? Sure, whatever you want to do. I'm sending you home anyway. I'm not responsible for your nutrition and whatever. they give it an innocence and a joy that I haven't felt in many years. Holidays were always a rough time for me, so I kind of hated them. And now that I have these grandkids, I just love being around them and seeing the joy. It's very contagious when you have little kids who are joyful to help you to be that way.
I just jump in and respond to something you said, Steph, about so I live with anxiety. I mentioned that earlier. I'm having anxious thoughts right now that okay, people are listening to this because they want strategies and they want answers and they want to know, how do I deal with Uncle Jeff who's going to bring up what do I do? And I'm thinking of these articles that you see on Medium, these stupid listicles, here's 10 strategies for, dealing with difficult family members during the... I don't know how you deal with your racist, homophobic uncle or whatever the situation is, just hypothetically, but what I think of is that it's like psychiatric meds. What works for you may not work for you, may work great for me, may work for me from 2012 to 2014, and then may stop working. I feel like the strategies have to be so unique and tailored to who you are and to whoever the opposing force is at your holiday dinner table or whatever. It takes a lot of thought and kind of customization. And you may think a strategy is going to work and then it completely blows up in your face. And I think that goes back to the whole idea of managing expectations and lowering the bar for success and understanding that you're human. You're a human being and giving yourself the grace of saying, I'm human and I'm going to try something and I'm going to try to redirect this conversation, or it may not work. It used to happen to me at the hospital when I'd be running group. I would try to redirect, and sometimes whatever strategy I was using would be a complete disaster, and I would make whatever was happening much worse. That's going to happen sometimes, and that's okay. You have next holiday to maybe get it right, or maybe not. And I think we just have to be okay with not only meeting the other people where they are, but meeting ourselves where we are. And having compassion for that.
No, I 100% agree with you. And I think that that's why it's important to recognize that recovery is fluid, right? What worked for me 18 years ago would not have been great for me 5 years ago or today, right? And I just think that remembering that as we talk through these strategies, because what works for one will not work for other people. And I always say, if you meet somebody that says, no, this is what you have to do, run. Right?
No such thing. Not in this scenario. Anyway, I think it is progress, not perfection. I don't think the perfect anything exists.
And now a brief word about 988. If you or a loved one are experiencing a mental health crisis or thinking about suicide, there is a number you need to know. It's easy, it's free, it's confidential. Call or text 988. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline connects you with trained counselors who are ready to help. 988. Save it in your phone. Help is always one call away. And now, back to the show.
Knowing that there are many Pennsylvanians who are struggling currently with behavioral health diagnoses, maybe some substance use or misuse concerns, and feeling anxious, having some barriers maybe around the recovery during the holiday season just because of that increased level of anxiety, anticipating what might happen. And I think what we wanted to start with was the idea of being present, right? So being present in the moment can be that best gift that you can bring with you to try to maintain your grounding, right? To stay grounded, to stay mindful. So we were kind of wondering if you have any examples of a time that you were present in a situation even while there was some chaos going on around you.
There's a great quote. I wish I knew who said it. And it says, wherever you are, be there. And it may not be your Hawaiian vacation ideal, And it may not be like going down the Swiss Alps or whatever, but it's where you are. And you can give yourself and the people around you the gift of just being there and appreciating what is there and who is there, and what loveliness they bring to your life. Hopefully there's something. And also appreciating and understanding their limitations. Everyone is limited in some way. Some people have a growth mindset. Some people are really stagnant in their views, or in how they're evolving as people. And, they are kind of what and who they are. And I know that some of the most frustrating experiences with my parents has been me metaphorically banging my head against the wall, wishing they were different. And they're not. And they're 78 and 77. And I am trying to get to a point in therapy, and I've been in therapy continuously since 2010. And a lot of those hours and co-pays have been devoted to accepting that, by and large, they're not going to change that much now. And, there's been a lot of teeth gnashing about that. But when I am able to get to a place of acceptance of what is lovely about them and what is frustrating about them, I can be more peaceful internally. And by extension, make what's happening externally nicer.
I think that for me, being present has how I view that has changed over the years. So just to backtrack a little bit, between the age of like 15 and 20, my life, I really spiraled with substance and alcohol use and just went down a path. And I was paralyzed with major depression, like non-functionable. So anyway, back in 2007, the behaviors that manifested as a result of the addiction and the depression caused a lot of damage in the relationships that I had around me. And so I did not think anybody wanted my presence. Do you know what I mean? So like my first year in recovery, just showing up, just being there, I think that I felt like a burden still. I was living in a recovery house. I had a lot of debt. I didn't have a driver's license, so family members had to like pick me up and drive me to and from. And so I just felt like that wasn't enough. So what I did was I opened up a credit card. And I got myself in some more debt, and I bought my parents a huge grill and their very first flat screen TV, right? Like almost 20 years ago. And so flat screens were like brand new and really fun. And I bought it for them. And so on Christmas morning, when they opened it, they were like, wow. And I don't recommend getting big flashy gifts and opening up a credit card and going into more debt for people, because it caused me so much more financial strain and stress. But I felt like that's what I had to do. I felt like that was what being present for my family meant, was that I was around now, so I was expected to bring gifts. I was around now, so I was expected to do things. And I can tell you that looking back now, if my mom and my dad knew how much pressure that put on me, they would not have accepted it. They would have just said, nope, turn that back, pay off, close that credit card. But, I didn't necessarily like myself, right? So if I didn't like me, nobody else was going to like me either. And that took a lot of work. And honestly, I don't think that recognizing how important it is to just be present, like I don't think I realized how important that was until I was on the other side and I was the family member and I just wanted other family members to be present. Mental health and, substance use tend to be family diseases and impact family systems. And so I have siblings that really struggle with symptoms of bipolar and with alcoholism addiction. And so now I'm on the other side saying, I just want you to come. I just want you to be here. You don't have to bring anything. You don't have to dress fancy. I just want you here, right? And so me feeling that as a family member has actually, I think, been so much more impactful. And now it changes how I show up, right? So yeah, I would say not to spend a lot of money on gifts and just being.
Trish, can I totally hijack this? Because I have a question for you about alcohol and the holidays.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you can.
So I'm kind of the polar opposite of you. I have never had alcohol, and I have never had it, I think, because of my anxiety and obsessive compulsive. I'm terrified that I will become addicted. And so to guard against that, probably unnecessarily, I've just never had anything. And it's not an issue for me, but what is an issue for me is when I say I don't drink, people make assumptions about why, or judgments, or there's pressure to do it, or it's like, oh, people are so dumb around alcohol. I don't have to tell you, but like, I'm curious about how you handle, because like booze and Christmas in particular, I think kind of they really intertwine. So how do you handle that, either at events that you host or at events that you're at? And particularly with siblings who struggle with this also.
So in the beginning, I would say I left. Like I would go to an event and then I would strategically leave, kind of like Steph talked about in the beginning. And because I do belong to a recovery community. And so I would leave and I would go to a meeting and get that support, and then I would go back. And then I would sandwich that. And then when I went to an outing that wasn't at family, that was out in public, I make people feel uncomfortable, and I tell them that it is because I'm a recovering alcoholic. It makes people feel really uncomfortable. They kind of look at you sideways, but then I'm kind of like outing myself so that if, triggers can happen anywhere, any time, it, cunning, baffling, powerful. And so I kind of just out myself. I recover loudly. Right? Some people like that. Some people may not. But it works for me. And I will say that because I recover loudly, people notice. And when they find themselves in a place of despair, or a family member in a place of despair, they've sought me out, and then they have support. So I have a sister that actually yesterday celebrated 3 years of sobriety. My brother is now on his own journey and is coming up on a year. And my other little sister, she has found that alcohol does not mix with her bipolar medications. And so she is also going on several years of not drinking. So 18 years ago, every Christmas was a kegger at my house. And actually the last 8 years have been dry. And so we just don't have alcohol there anymore. And it's not because the rest of my family can't drink. They can. They can drink very appropriately. But they support each other now. It's different. So that probably doesn't answer your question. I probably went on a complete tangent. But
no, it really did. Yeah, thank you.
And, I think that in the beginning, I really didn't think I could have fun without alcohol.
I think a lot of people think that. I think people in recovery think that. I think people who are in addiction think that. I think everybody thinks that. It's so normalized, and alcohol in this society in particular, I think, is treated so benignly, and it is so enmeshed in this idea of having fun, and that. I can remember being a college student, being treated like I was the craziest person on earth for going to a big drinking school, which I had no idea it was, and not drinking. Like, how can you even be a human being and not do that?
Just one more quick story. Because the culture in my family has changed so much, and my mom will still have a glass of wine if she goes out to dinner. Like my parents have never had a challenge with alcohol or anything, and my brother hasn't either. So we have a dry house. All of our holidays are now dry. And when we're around other family members, like my in-laws who have one glass, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's not even noticeable. So it was last year about this time, and my daughter was a cheerleader for the North Penn Flyers. And we drove past the Cannoneers in Lansdale, which are like the rival Cannoneers team. And I said, "Oh, Riley, that's where the Cannoneers play out of." And she said, "Oh, well, what is it?" And I said, "Well, that's a bar." She said, well, what's a bar? I said, oh my gosh, you're 8 years old and you don't know what a bar is? I kind of judge myself, right? Because I knew what a bar is when I was 8. And I said, well, it's a place where adults go to drink alcohol. She said, oh, well, what's alcohol? I said, oh my goodness. Well, alcohol, it's a drink that just grown-ups can drink it. Oh, do you drink alcohol? No, mommy's allergic. Oh, does daddy drink alcohol? No, daddy's allergic. Does Aunt Kate drink alcohol? No, Aunt Kate's allergic. Am I allergic? I don't know, baby. You might be. We'll see one day. Like, that's how the conversation went. So
that's amazing how not normalized alcohol is. And I love that. I'm like Gabe. I was always the one that got made fun of for not being a partier at all. I grew up with a mother who had all sorts of addictions, so I certainly wasn't going to allow myself to go down that road. So I understand that, but I do understand it can be a lot for somebody who might have that during the holidays when it's like eggnog and wine and everything's everywhere, right? So thank you so much for that. And I was going to swing back to the being present part and just as a tip, encourage people to watch children. Children are always present in the moment because they don't know any different. They don't think about what just happened. They don't think about what's about to happen. They're into what they're doing at the moment. So if they're playing a game, that's what they're doing. If they're, dancing around the Christmas tree, that's what they're doing. And for me, I kind of watch the kids and use that to help me remain grounded, even if everything around me is spinning. And I think that also helps bring us around to the next strategy, which is around how do you find joy? We want to be joyful at the holidays. That's what all the commercials tell us we should be. That's what all the movies tell us we should be. That's what all the songs tell us we should be. Of course, we want to be joyful, truly feel joy. And so I'm curious if you have any strategies on how you do that, even when things are spinning out, around you that maybe aren't so joyful.
As Trish mentioned, we met at a locked inpatient psychiatric hospital many years ago. 15 years ago, I can't believe it. That was not a joyful place. I think that's perhaps an understatement. And I can tell you that my mental health suffered extremely from being immersed in that world and not being prepared for it. And I don't know that you can be prepared for it, really. But I did two things, one intentionally and one unintentionally, to try to save myself, if that's not too dramatic, and also to find joy. One was I started going to therapy almost immediately after being hired, because I knew I was not going to get out alive from that place if I didn't get help. And so I found someone who I'm still with today as my therapist. I'm very lucky. I hit a home run out of the park the first time. And that was really essential in keeping me afloat. So that was an intentional thing. The unintentional thing was I started to do things at the hospital that were ostensibly for the patients and the staff, but I think they were, if I really think about it, it was more to help me. I started an inpatient concert series where I would bring musical acts into the hospital to perform for the patients. I did a full-scale production of the play Our Town with the staff in all the roles. And we performed at this abandoned theater on the state hospital grounds that hadn't been used in like 25 years. And every year I would read a Christmas carol aloud from start to finish on Christmas Eve day in the day room to anyone who wanted to come listen. It took 4 hours start to finish. And then the next day I would stuff myself full of pillows and dress up as Santa Claus. I was the skinny Jewish Santa Claus going down the hallways, wishing everyone Merry Christmas and giving out gift bags, which had toiletries or gloves, and warm hats and stuff like that. And I think that I was making my own joy. And I think you kind of can't depend on other people to help you be joyful, especially if you're in not a great place mentally, or you're going to not a great place or a potentially triggering place. You have to make your own joy. And whether it's cooking a side that you really love, and who cares if anyone else likes it, but you're bringing it there for yourself, really, if your sole joy is leaving the event, if it's getting in the car and closing the door and putting on your favorite song on the drive home, where you're mentally processing all the garbage that you heard and endured, if that's your sole joy, great, then that's your joy. But you really have to do it for yourself.
Yeah. I have two experiences. The first is that when it comes to joy, it is okay to not be okay. And when I have felt really sad or really angry or really stressed, really frustrated or really anything, it helps to talk about it, right? I went to Lackey Valley Foundation had a suicide prevention conference this year, and their keynote speaker was Kevin Hine, who is an attempt survivor who had survived a fall off the Golden Gate Bridge. And he says, a pain shared is a pain halved. I gotta tell you, that is my lived experience over the last 18 plus years. So I think that if I am not feeling joyful, it is okay to talk about that. And at the same time, I can make the decision to act joyful. So even if I don't authentically feel full of joy, putting on those behaviors and almost faking it until I make it has actually helped at different times, right? So I don't know if any of you have ever done laughter yoga. No, it's silent. Okay, no, just me. Well, laughter yoga is there's a lot of research behind it. It started in the 1990s, and it goes off the premise that your body doesn't know if you are laughing and smiling, authentically, or if you're faking it. And even if you're faking it, you still get the benefits. And laughter can increase endorphins, and it can lower cortisol, and that ultimately reduces stress and increases blood flow. And so once upon a time, I took a laughter yoga course. And what I found was that when I was pretending to laugh, other people thought that looked weird and they laughed, and then I was laughing because they were laughing, and then it became contagious. And it's true, right? So I equate intentional joyfulness is very similar to laughter yoga, right? It's just the decision to do it. And I think that the more that I try to practice that, the more authentic it can become. Steph earlier was talking about kids and like just watching the kids, and that can help us be present. Kids laugh 300 to 400 times a day. And Gabe, pop quiz. How many times a day does an adult laugh on average?
3.
Like 15 to 20 max, right? Like, oh my gosh.
We've done that already during this podcast. Yeah.
Easy. That's because we're really fun.
Right.
But yeah, like laughter yoga, and they actually have free meetups. I, would encourage anybody to try it. I'll go with you. Faking it until you're making it. I have found that for myself, I cannot necessarily think myself into a better mind frame, and I have to act myself into a better mind frame. And sometimes that works, right? So I think it's both okay to not be okay, and I think it's okay to fake it until you make it, and everywhere in between.
So speaking as a recovering theater major, I will say that reminding yourself that everything is a performance. This podcast is a performance, not that we're being fake, but it's a slightly like amped up version of who we really are, right? We're thinking about things to say. We want to be relevant and engaging. We want to be able to, keep the conversation going. It's a performance. How they get together, it is a performance. And so, yeah, if you're faking it, if you're not really feeling it, reminding yourself that everyone else is probably performing also, and that the performance has a finale and it will end. And then there's that kind of relief that, okay, I got through this. It's okay.
Yeah, I'll just add that I like the performance, it will end. And so to put something at the end of the night, put something at the end after you leave that's just joyful for you, right? That's just joyful for me, right? So what am I going to do after everybody leaves and the kids are in bed? I am going to have some Turkey Hill mint chocolate chip ice cream by myself, and I'm not going to share it.
Yeah, such great examples you both provided, and great reminders really that self-care isn't selfish. It's really where we can tap into real joy. And now, a brief word from Magellan of Pennsylvania. We're here to support our members and their families. If you are a loved one or a Magellan of Pennsylvania member and need information about your services, please visit us online. Find answers and resources at www.magellanofpa.com. That's www.magellanofpa.com. And now, back to the show.
And one of the other things that we wanted to kind of get into in terms of strategies or just kind of approaches is the importance of establishing or setting boundaries when necessary. So I'd be interested to hear from each of you your thoughts about the importance of setting boundaries with friends, family, or at other social gatherings. And then if you can also touch on a little bit about the importance of having a conversation involving boundaries, because I know this can be a little bit of a tricky conversation to initiate.
So, I think it's incredibly important to establish boundaries. Nobody is going to protect you except you, and nobody is going to have your best interests and kind of safeguarding your mental health other than you. So you have to do it. Same as you're the one who has to find your own joy. Puts a lot of responsibility on you, but it's true. It is on you. But I think we've talked a lot about like family dynamics and things and this uncle or this person kind of saying this or having this view and navigating all of those potentially thorny things. You can also make a boundary that says, I'm not going. You can decide to go to so-and-so's house or so-and-so's apartment or gathering or whatever it is and try to navigate all that stuff. And that's totally valid. And that's great if that's what you want to do. If you are not in a place to do that, your boundary can simply be, it is not in my best interest of my mental health to come to this event. And I'm just not. And that may be disruptive. That may cause some drama of its own within the family structure. But that's a valid choice that you can make also. And I feel like sometimes we feel like that's not an option, that, I have to go. I have to show up. It's December 25th, so I have to do this. We've done this every year, so I have to do it this year. No, you don't. I don't know, please just consider that as the days are rolling on and it's getting closer and closer. You can make the decision to set a boundary for yourself that I don't think this is going to be healthy for me, and just decide not to do it. If you are making the decision to be with people who, you think there may be problematic things coming up or views or discussions or conversations, I think just saying, this makes me uncomfortable. I'm not going to be talking about this. You can change the conversation, but I think directness is the best way to go about it. Look the person in the eye and say, you're making me uncomfortable. It's not appropriate to ask me about my weight or when am I having a child or whatever, because people will do what they can get away with. And I think that if you let people know that they can't get away with something, that's a really important way to try to get them to stop. And it may not work this year. It may not work the next year. It may work in the future. I think directness is really the key. Directness or just avoidance entirely. They're both legit.
Yeah, I think that boundaries protect us and boundaries are healthy, right? So when I first began my journey of wellness, I think I had a lot of preconceived notions, right? If I start the depression medication, life will get better. When I put the drink down, life will get better. And that's just not reality, right? Like, just because I'm not drinking doesn't mean that I'm not full of, pain and shame and guilt and anxiety and depression and all these other things. And now I don't have anything to numb it and I'm with you all, right? I remember watching commercials and seeing this woman that I could relate to. I could relate to these commercials. I can't remember the medication that it was, but she was walking around and she was sad and she had this like smiley face in front of her and everything was gray. And then all of a sudden, she took this magic pill and she took away the smiley face and her frown turned upside down. And all of a sudden, it was like bright and she could hear the birds chirping. And it like, that's not reality, right? So like, just because I took this depression medication didn't mean that all of a sudden everything was better and I didn't feel that anymore. And so I say that because I had those expectations and other people did as well. So showing up to a family or holiday event, they expected me to be all better, right? On like day one. And that's just not reality. So I think that if I am still in that place, then being direct, like Gabe said, and also just being clear on what I am willing and able to do. Maybe I am not able to cook a dish, right? So that goes back to then setting that boundary and saying that, but I can be present with you if that's what you want, right? Maybe the boundary is that, I'm going to go for 2 hours and then I'm going to leave. Maybe it's, finding new traditions. But then on the flip side, like just because I get better doesn't mean other people are getting better, right? So that goes back to the setting the boundaries with other people that I needed to protect myself. And so I think that for those types of boundaries with other people that may still be in my life that are not necessarily on their own journey of wellness or don't recognize that what they say or they do cause me harm, it's easier for me to set boundaries when I have support. And in the beginning, I found support in people that were also going through similar things. So I found support in, 12-step meetings, in NAMI fellowship groups, Celebrate Recovery. When I connected with other people that were struggling with similar things, and they helped me to also find this language. And what I think is really great in, the state of Pennsylvania is we have peer support and recovery support programs in almost every county. And that's one of the really amazing skills that peer and recovery specialists can help people develop in the 5-county area, at least Monco, Philly, Bucks. We have recovery community centers that are hosted by PROACT, the Council of Southeast, that people can just go to on the day of the holiday if they feel like they don't have another safe space to go to. And so if I have a family or friends that are not respectful of my wellness, then just not going and finding someplace else.
Real quick, related to that, the first Thanksgiving after I got divorced, holidays look different. I drove to Cape May by myself. I walked along the beach. It was wonderful and quiet and peaceful. I took pictures of old Victorian houses. I got in the car. I drove home. I made myself salmon and rice and asparagus. It was not the traditional Thanksgiving dinner. I had such a wonderful time. The holidays don't have to look a certain way. Film and television have told us for decades that this is what it looks like and this is what it has to be. You can make choices. You are not shackled to these ideas. You can make different choices. You can go to one of those places that Trish talked about. You can be by yourself. You can be with friends instead of family, your chosen family. Whatever it is that you have to do, that's okay.
I think for me, I would say not only are boundaries healthy, boundaries are kind. I think the truth is kind. I think boundaries are your own truth, right? And we really do teach people how to treat us. Like Gabe said, we're on our own, right? I'm a huge Swiftie, and it's just not called you're on your own kid, right? You're on your own kid and you always have been. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody. I always tell my staff, you cannot work harder for somebody than they're willing to work for themselves. And you must maintain boundaries because you're teaching them how to treat you and what behavior that you'll accept. If you answer the phone at 3 a.m., they're going to call you at 3 a.m., those kinds of things. So I just think boundaries are the key to recovery. At least they have been for me, and I think they probably are for most people. And when I've struggled has been when I have compromised on a boundary where I shouldn't have. So to me, they're key, really important for this time of year.
And it's really uncomfortable. So I think that, we talk about it like, oh yeah, just set a boundary. Yeah, just say no, but it's not. It's very uncomfortable. Actually, all of this is uncomfortable. I mean, right, Gabe? It's all uncomfortable. If you meet somebody that says that that getting well and recovery are easy, I don't know. Am I doing it wrong? Because it is. It's a muscle that you build when you get through like the first one, the first two, and you start to build that muscle memory. Like, oh, I set a boundary with this person and I survived. Oh, well, I didn't, bring a gift to this person and they still like me. Like you start to build that. So it's a process. It is a practice. It is a skill that is built, and it is not easy.
And another skill, we'll transition to the next or maybe last strategy that we're going to talk about, and that's in expressing gratitude, true gratitude. And I have found through my bazillion years of therapy that gratitude really has to be intentional. I have to set a mindset of gratitude every day and sort of make sure I'm checking off I always call it my attitude of gratitude. I can tell when I haven't looked at what there is to be grateful for. I can tell because I get more easily agitated and aggravated and things like that. So for me, gratitude has been a huge part of my recovery. I do every morning. I'm always just like, thank you for waking me up. Thank you and however it is that you practice it. For me, I pray, and I give thanks. And then throughout the day, I try to express gratitude for the sun in the sky, or to, for whatever silly thing I see when I'm walking or out and about. Curious how it is that you, what is your attitude around gratitude, and how is it that you practice that? Do you find that to be something that is important in your recovery as well?
It's immensely important, and it's also really hard to do. Like Trish said, it's all really hard. And it's really hard to be grateful, I think, particularly now with these #challenging times. It's very easy to get despondent, and it's very easy to get angry, and it's very easy to get resentful, and to feel like everything is spiraling. And the truth is that some things are, and some things aren't. And I think for me, reality checking myself, making sure that I'm keeping proper perspective and not going down the loop of everything is awful, everything sucks, everything is da-da-da, because that's never true. And, I mentioned Our Town earlier, and I think about this play a lot and what Thornton Wilder was trying to show us through Our Town. And I think the biggest lesson is that we float through life and we don't see each other. We don't really look at each other. In Act 3, Emily Webb, who has died in childbirth, comes back to her mother, and her mother is just bustling around the kitchen and just totally involved in, the banalities of daily life. And Emily, who is a spirit, it cries out to her mother. She says, "Mama, look at me as though you really saw me." And I think it's only when we're able to stop and really look at another person, really look at ourselves, really look at what is around us, really look at where we are as a people, that we can be grateful. You can't be grateful for something that you don't see. And we just go through life not seeing, or only seeing what's negative. I think sometimes that's the easiest thing. When I used to do theater, it didn't matter how many people came up to me and said it was wonderful. If there was one person who said something critical, that's what I would focus on and unsee everything else. It had the ability to just magically erase all the good stuff. And that sucks. What a crappy way to go through life. See it all. And then you will see what there is to be grateful for. And I think you'll genuinely feel that. That's my hope at any rate.
I think sometimes too, we have to keep in mind that we're not always grateful at first when something happens, but we find out later that that thing that we thought was bad ended up being, or, maybe not bad is the right word, but maybe we thought something was a negative that it turned out as a positive. So,
yeah, I really like that quote. I'm going to steal it from you, Gabe. You can't be grateful for what you can't see. You heard it here first from Trish 9. No.
Let's take it. Run with it.
But yeah, I agree with both of you. And Steph, yes, in the beginning, gratitude was not something that I could practice. I was really just kind of consumed in a place of self-pity when I was kind of first getting myself in a place of wellness. I was facing jail time. I was living in a recovery house. I had tons of debt because I bought these people all these expensive gifts. I think that I had, somebody was put in my path, and she told me that I needed to get out of myself and do service for others. She told me that doing esteemable acts builds esteem. And so that's what I did. I started volunteering at Manna on Main Street, which is I would take all the donated food, and I would go through and find all the expired food and all of the edible food. And I just spent hours downstairs in a concrete basement of an old building. And when I left, I felt like I had done something to contribute, right? And it got me out of myself. So I was no longer thinking about the things that I had done to myself to cause those circumstances. And that felt good. And I felt good. And by doing that, I do think that I shifted into an attitude of gratitude. And then, she challenged me. She told me to do kind things for others and not take credit for it, not tell anybody. And so opening the door for somebody, letting somebody in traffic, giving somebody a compliment, whether it was true or not, those small acts ended up having big impacts. And so I think that when I focus on others and focus a little bit less on me, it does help me see the things that I didn't see before, right? And so that I can have a grateful heart. So, I guess my challenge for anybody listening is to find somebody to do something kind for them and don't tell them, and then do it again and keep doing it until you feel good about yourself. And that's when you'll start to have a grateful heart.
And now, a brief word from Magellan of Pennsylvania. Tired of feeling unheard when it comes to your behavioral health services? If you or your child are a Magellan of Pennsylvania member, here's your chance to step up. Magellan is looking for members to serve on complaint and grievance panels. This isn't just a meeting, it's an opportunity to have a direct voice, review service issues, and actively improve the quality of the behavioral health system for everyone. You have the power to make a difference. Get involved today. To learn more, call John Botker at 877-769-9784. That's 877-769-9784. And now, back to the show.
One of the primary goals for this podcast is to help reduce stigma by having conversations like the one we're having right now. And hopefully we can help others to feel comfortable to have similar conversations. And we typically ask each of our guests about stigma specific to mental health, substance use, and recovery. And so I'd be interested to get each of your perspectives about stigma and whether from your experiences and perspective, we're making any progress related to reducing stigma overall.
I think we're definitely getting there, but I think it's a long, hard slog. And I think there are forces in this country in particular at this point that are working very hard to set us back. And I think that's very unfortunate. The three ingredients for hindering mental health, I'll begin with an S, and they're stigma, secrecy, and shame. And we need to do everything possible to put red lines through all of those S words. We need to keep talking. We need to keep talking about mental health. We need to keep talking about substance abuse. We need to keep talking about it publicly. We need to keep talking about it privately. a long time ago when I was really struggling as a little child, like 8, 9, 10, I asked my mother if I could see a therapist. And she said, "Oh, Gabriel, there's nothing wrong with you." And very clearly there was. And I did not go to therapy until I was in college, when I didn't have to ask for permission and I could just go to the counseling center. And that changed my life. That said, it took my mother a long time before she could talk to me about my mental health, before she could talk to me about how's my medication, how am I really doing? Not just, hey, how are you? Which is what she's most comfortable with. And, she's a really tough nut to crack. I have a nickname for her, VPP, very private person. That's what I hear all the time. Gabriel, I'm a very private person. I don't talk about da-da-da-da. And I have had to work really hard to be like, okay, that's who you are. That's not who I am. And it's not what I need from you. And we've made a lot of progress. It's not great, but it's better. And I use that personal example to say that the iceberg can melt, and it doesn't matter how icy it is. It just takes a lot of time. But people can change, even if it's just a little bit. It takes work. It takes advocacy. It takes patience. It takes understanding that you don't have control over someone else and what they say. You only have control over how you react to it. That's a really hard thing to learn. But I really believe if we continue pushing and continue agitating and continue talking, it is going to get better. And I see it at Recovery Diaries too. A long time ago, when we first started, we had to bang on doors and beg people to send us essays about mental health. Now we can't force the door shut on it. They're coming from all over the world all the time. And so that's really heartening for me. People want to come forward. They want to talk about this stuff. And there's an outlet in there. We're certainly not the only one, but people are moving towards those outlets. And it's really wonderful and hopeful to see.
I'm also going to steal the 3 S's from you because I love that.
I'm sure I stole that from someone else. I don't know.
No, I love it. And I love it because I feel like it's true. It's true to my experience. It very much speaks to me. And I also think that what's really great about this conversation is that we have such different experiences. When I was 16, my mom tried to push me into treatment. She tried to push me to talk to a therapist because it was like,
what would I have given?
I know. I did not want to go. I lied. I was like, I don't know. My mom's crazy. Like, I don't know why I'm here. You all know why I was there. But it was like she sensed that there was something going on. But I was so secretive that she couldn't quite pinpoint it almost until it was too late. But how funny is that, right? Because there is no one thing that brings us here, right? So, and I think that also speaks to why what's going to help us is also very different, right? So the secrecy, well, stigma. I would agree with Gabe. I think that there's still so much more work to be done. The secrecy, I recover very loudly. Sometimes I feel like it probably makes people feel a little uncomfortable. But it works for me. And as a result of just being open, I don't necessarily talk super publicly about my specific pathway, but I do belong to a, recovery community. And so I talk about that, on social media and openly. And as a result, I have had people approach me, like my kids' parents from daycare and school. I have had neighbors stop me while I was walking with my kids. I've had old classmates contact me on Facebook and they've reached out because they're struggling, their partners are struggling, or sometimes their kids are struggling, and I think that helps, that we recover loudly so that others don't have to suffer in silence. And I also think that, with secrecy, like people are very intentional right now about breaking generational patterns. I feel like I very much see that. I mean, just in my own family, my mom's upbringing, I can't even imagine. neglect, foster care, abuse. And she has done so much work to break a lot of that, to allow me to be able to be here openly, right? Because I'm actually the first person in my family that has that has moved into a place of sobriety and recovery. Before that, I mean, 2 uncles, my aunt, 3 cousins, they've all died of addiction or of, suicide. And so this is a change. This is disruption, kind of like Gabe talked about earlier. And so I'm now able to continue that process and continue to break generational patterns and traumas and abuses. And hopefully my kids, who at the age of 8 have no idea what the word alcohol is, they might not experience that. And if they do, they'll know that recovery is not only possible, it's probable because it's happened, right? They've seen it. And so I think that's where I would agree with challenging the secrecy. And then the shame in my family, we celebrate recovery. So like January 4th, that's my anniversary. My husband will do something very nice for me, just to celebrate that. My sister and with her 3 years, actually last year, we went out to breakfast and we all celebrated it. And then my daughter said to me, same daughter who doesn't know the word alcohol, she said, well, what are we doing here? And I said, well, it's been 2 years since, Aunt Kate was in the hospital. Oh, and the year before that, she was actually in the ICU for breathing problems. And she said, well, it's been 1 year since I was in the hospital. When are we celebrating my anniversary? And I was like, oh, yes. We will celebrate your anniversary too on December 3rd, of, being out of CHOP ICU, and so now it's just kind of a thing that we celebrate, right? So I think that when we celebrate it, it reduces the shame.
Such a hopeful message, such a great positive message. And so our final question, and one that we ask each of our guests, is our one thing question. And I know we've covered quite a bit of ground, and we've really gotten some wonderful information. But if you had to pick one thing, one nugget for our listeners to walk away from this episode now knowing, what would that be?
I think my one thing is acceptance. Acceptance of yourself and where you are in your recovery. Acceptance of your family members and where they are in their own recoveries or in perhaps their complete obliviousness to the fact that they should be in recovery. And acceptance that your holiday is going to go how it's going to go and that you have control over precious little of that. But not all, whether you're hosting it or whether you're a guest. Acceptance of what it is, or after it's done, what it was. And to say, okay, that was a thing. It didn't go perfectly. It may have even been, a bit off the rails or more. I accept that. And I'm not going to torture myself over it and be like the victim of my own expectations. I think acceptance is so, so important to really being kinder and calmer with your own mind, because my mind in particular can really put myself through the ringer if something hasn't gone exactly right. And I blame myself for it, and it can be really destructive. So yeah, accept whatever your holiday is for what it is and move along. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean anything except that this is how it was.
I would say that wellness and recovery don't happen overnight. It starts with a conclusion that something's not okay, and then a decision to change, followed by action. Whether that action is therapy, medication, support groups, exercise, volunteering, or laughter yoga. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of effort. But over time, our gratitude grows, our boundaries create healthy relationships, and that joy becomes real. I have found that recovery is contagious and wellness is infectious, and that when we continue to put action in, we can see big benefits for ourselves and also for the people around us.
Those are really great messages to leave the listeners with. And I want to thank you both, Trish and Gabe, for being on the Behavioral Health Matters podcast. We really appreciate it. And also a special thanks to you, Steph, for being our co-host for this conversation. We wish all of you a wonderful holiday season and all the best going forward.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Stick around. We'll be right back to wrap things up. As we pause to reflect on this episode's conversation and the powerful takeaways we discussed for navigating the holiday season, or really any season, we ask ourselves, what did we learn? Well, we learned that being present is the greatest gift you can offer. We also learned that joy during the holidays is often an intentional decision you make, not just a feeling that strikes. We learned about the importance of setting clear boundaries to protect your peace. And lastly, we learned that expressing true gratitude and practicing mindfulness takes effort, but it's well within reach. We hope these insights help you move through the next few weeks with more calm and joy. We'd like to thank our guests on this episode, Trish Nye and Gabe Nathan. And a special thanks to our co-host for this episode, Steph Cassanese. We'd like to thank all of you for listening to this episode, and we invite you back for our next episode. And remember, if you have any feedback or episode topics you'd like to suggest, you can email me directly at jglees@magellanhealth.com. And if you like this episode, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more Behavioral Health Matters content. Well, there's the music, and that's our show. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, remember, Behavioral Health Matters.